Welcome to my channel Lotus Domino TV. Today we are going to show you AWS IAM interview question and answer. What is AWS Identity Access Management IAM? You can use IAM securely control individual and group access to your AWS resource. You can create and manage user identities, IAM user, and grant permission for those IAM user to access your resource. You can also grant permission for user outside of AWS. That is called federal users. What problem does IAM solve? IAM make easy to provide multiple users secure and access your AWS resources. IAM enable you to manage IAM user at their access. You can create a user in AWS Identity Management System, assign user individual security credential, such as access key, password, multi-factor authentication device. Request temporary security credential to provide a user access to AWS services and resource. You can specify permission to control which operations a user can perform. Manage access for a federal user. You can request security credential with configurable expirations for user who you manage in your corporate directory, allowing you allowing you to provide your employees application secure access to resource in your AWS account without creating an IAM user account of them. You specify permission for these security credential to control which operation a user can perform. How do user call AWS services? User can make a request to AWS services using security credential. Explicit policy permission govern a user ability to call AWS service. By default, user have no ability to call services API on behalf of the account. How are IAM user manage? IAM support multiple method to create and manage IAM user, create and manage IAM group, manage user security credentials, create and manage policy to grant access AWS services and resource. Can I enable or disable user access? Yes, you can enable and disable IAM user access key via IAM API, AWS CLI, IAM console. If you disable the access key, the user cannot programmatically access AWS services. Who is able to manage user for AWS account? The AWS account holder can manage user group security credentials and permission. In addition, you may grant permission to individual users to place a call to IAM API in order to manage other users. For example, administrator users may create to manage user for corporation. Recommended practices. When you grant a user permission to manage the user, they can do this via IAM APIs and AWS CLI IAM console. Can I define user regionally? Not initially. Users are global entities. Like AWS account is today, no reason is required to be specified when you define a user permission. User can use AWS services in any geographic region. How are MFA device configured for IAM user? You can order multiple MFA device. You can assign these devices to individual IAM user via IAM API, IAM CLI, IAM console. What kind of the key rotations is supported for IAM user. User access key X509 certificates can be rotated just they are for the AWS account root access identifier. You can manage the rotate programmatical user access key X509 certificate via IAM API, AWS CLI, IAM console. Can IAM user have individual EC2 SSH key? Not. In the initial release, IAM does not affect EC2 SSH window RDP certificate. This means that although each user has a separate credential for accessing web service API, they must share SSH key that their common access AWS account under which user have been defined. Where can I use my SSH key? SSH key. Currently, IAM user can use SSH key only with the AWS code commit to access their repositories. Do IAM user names have to be email address? No, but they can be. Username is just ASCII string that unique within a given AWS account. You can assign a name using any naming conventions you can choose, including email address. Which character set can I use for IAM username? You can only use a ASCII character for IAM entities. Can I set users quota on IAM users? No, all the time are AWS accounts as a whole. For example, if your AWS account has a limit to 20 Amazon EC2 instances, IAM user with the EC2 permission can start instances up to the limit. You cannot limit that. An individual user can do. What is IAM role? IAM role is an entity that defines a set of permission for making AWS request. IAM role are not associated with the specific user or group. Instead, untrusted entities assume role such as IAM user and applications. AWS services such as EC2. What problem do IAM roles solve? IAM roles allow you to delegate access define permission to the trusted entities without having to share a long-term access key. You can use IAM role delegates access to IAM user managed within your accounts to IAM user under the different AWS accounts. Yeah, AWS services such as EC2. How do I get started with IAM role? You can create a role in the way similar to how you create a user name and role, attach the policy to it. How do I assume a IAM role? You assume a IAM role by calling my AWS security token STS assume role. In other words, assume roles with the web identity, assume role with SAML. These APIs return to set a temporary security credential that application can then use to sign a request to AWS Service API. How many IAM roles can I assume? There is no limit to the number of IAM roles you can assume, but you can act as one IAM role when making a request to AWS services. What is the difference between the IAM role and IAM user? IAM user has a permanent long-term credential and it use directly interact with the AWS services. And IAM role does not have any credential that and cannot make direct requests to AWS services. IAM role are means to assume by the authorities entities such as IAM user applications and AWS services such as EC2. When should I use IAM user, IAM group, IAM role? And IAM user has a permanent long-term credential in and it used directly interact with the AWS service. And IAM group primarily manage convinced to manage the same set of permission for a set of IAM user. IAM role is an AWS identity and access management entity with the permission to make AWS services request. IAM role cannot make a direct request to AWS services. They are they are meant to be assumed by the authorities entities such as IAM user applications and AWS services such as EC2 and use IAM roles to delegate access between AWS account. Can I add IAM role to IAM group? Not at this time. How many IAM role can I create? You you are limited to up to 1000 IAM roles under AWS account. If you are need to more role, then you can submit the form to create to use cases we will consider for request. What is IAM role for EC2 instances? IAM role for EC2 instances enable your application running on EC2 make requests to AWS services such as S3, Amazon SQS, Amazon SNS without having to copy AWS access to every instances. Can I use the same IAM role on the multiple EC2 instances? Yes. Can I change IAM role on the running EC2 instances? Yes, although role usually assigned to the EC2 instances, when your instances is role can also be assigned to EC2 instances that are already running. Can I associate IAM role with the already running EC2 instances? Yes, you can add IAM role to additional parameters through auto scaling launch configuration and create auto scaling group that will be launch configurations. All EC2 instances launch auto scaling group that associated with IAM roles to launch with the role of input parameter. Can I associate with the more than one IAM role with the EC2 instances? No, you can only associate one IAM role with the EC2 instance at a time. This limit is one role per instances cannot be increased. Now what happened? What happened if I delete my IAM role that is associated with running EC2 instances? Any application running on instances that is using the role will be denied access immediately. I repeating again this chapter on the this sheet. Can I associate IAM role with an already running EC2 instances? Yes, you can assign a role to EC2 instances that are already running. Can I associate IAM role with the auto scaling group? Yes, you can add IAM role an additional parameter to auto scaling launch configuration and create auto scaling group with the launch configurations. All EC2 instances launch auto scaling group that are associated with IAM roles uh, are launched with the role as an input parameter. Can I associate more than one IAM role with EC2? No, you can only associate one role with EC2 instance at a time. This limit is one role per instance cannot be increased. What happened? I delete my roles associated with running EC2 instances. Any application running of instances that is using that role will be denied access immediately. Which permission are required to launch EC2 instances with IAM role? Which permissions are required to launch EC2 instances with IAM role? You must grant access IAM user to this distinct permission as successfully launch EC2 instances with role. Permission to launch EC2 instances. Permission to associate IAM role with EC2 instance. Who can access key on EC2 instance? Any local users on instances can access the associated key access key associated with IAM role. How do I use IAM role with my application on EC2 instances? If you develop your application with AWS SDK, AWS SDK automatically use AWS access key that have been made by available on EC2 instances. If you are not using AWS SDK, you can retrieve access key from the EC2 instance metadata service. How do I rotate temporary security credential on the EC2 instances? AWS temporary security credential associated with IAM role are automatically rotated multiple times a day. New temporary security credentials are made available no later than 5 minutes before existing temporary security credential expire. Can I use IAM role for EC2 instances with any type of Amazon machine image? Yes, IAM role. Uh, yes, IAM role for EC2 instances also work in Amazon Virtual Private VPC, sports and reserve instances. What is a service link role? A service link role is a type of role that link to AWS services, known as link services, such as that only linked services can assume the role. Using this role, you can delegate permission to AWS services to create and manage AWS resources on your behalf. How do permission work? Access control policies are attached to the user and group role are assigned permission to AWS resources. By default, IAM users and groups uh, roles have no permissions. User with the sufficient permission must use a policy to grant a desired permission. How do I assign permission using the policy? To set the permission, you can create an attached policy with the AWS management console. The IAM APIs, yeah, AWS CLI user have been granted necessary permissions can create policies assigned to them IAM user and group and role. Can I use manage policy to resources based policy? Manage based policies can be attached to IAM group roles. You cannot use them the resource based policy. Who can create and manage access key in AWS account? Only AWS account owner can manage the access key and for root account. The account owner IAM users a role that have been granted the necessary permission can be manage access key for IAM user. Can I grant permission to the access AWS resources on by another account? Yes, use the IAM roles. IAM user federated user can access resource another AWS via AWS Management Console, AWS CLI APIs. What is IAM Policy Simulator? The IAM Policy Simulator tool that is understand the test and validate effective your access control policy. Can user SSH to EC2 instance using AWS username and password? No, user security credential created IAM are not supported for direct authentication to the customer EC2 instances. Managing EC2 SSH credential is a customer responsibility within the EC2 console. What are the temporary security credential? Temporary security credential consists of the AWS access key ID, secret key, and security token. Temporary security credentials are valid for a specified duration for a specific set of permission. Temporary security credentials are sometimes simply preferred as a token. Token can be requested for IAM user, a federated user you manage in your own corporate directory. Can I reactivate to extend expiry of temporary security credentials? No, it's not a good practice to activate a check expiry, request expiration, and request a new temporary security credential before old one expire. This rotation process automatically managed for you when your temporary security credentials are used in the role EC2 instances. Can I use API CLI activate deactivate AWS STG group? Reason? No, there is no API CLI support at this time to activate deactivate AWS STS. Reason? We are planning to provide SC in future release. What is identity federation? AWS Identity and Access Management supports identity federations for delegation access to AWS Management Console AWS API. With a identity federation, external identity are granted to secure access to resource in your own AWS accounts without having to create IAM user. Do you support SAML? Yes. AWS support security assertions markup language SAML 2.0. How many federated user can I access to AWS Management Console? There is no limit to number of federated user who can access the console. What is the Web Identity Federation? Web Identity Federation allows you to create AWS Power mobile app, use public identity providers such as Amazon logging, Amazon Facebook logging for authentications. What is AWS MFA? AWS MFA authentication provide extra level of security that can be applied for AWS environment. You can enable AWS MFA account and for individual account identity access management. User user you can create under the account. Can I have a multiple MFA device active for my AWS account? Yes. Each IAM user have its own MFA device identity access root accounts can associated with only one MFA device. Can I use my U2F security key for multiple AWS account? Yes, AWS allowed to use a U2F security key with several root IAM user across multiple account. What is virtual MFA device? A virtual MFA device is integrated for a TOTP compatibility software application that can be generate 6-digit authentication code. Software application can run on any compatibility computing device such as a smartphone. Uh, where where do I enable AWS MFA? You can enable AWS MFA account and IAM user in the IAM console AWS CLI by calling the AWS APIs. Note AWS CLI APIs do not currently supported for enabling U2F security key. For virtual hardware MFA, can I use given MFA code more than once? No. For security reason, you can use each MFA code provided by your virtual hardware MFA device only once. How how do I disable MFA? To disable MFA, AWS MFA for your account, you can deactivate your MFA device using security credential page. Disabling account MFA for your IAM user, you need to use IAM console, AWS CLI. Does IAM security services cost anything? No. This is a feature for AWS account provided no additional charges. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and like and share this video.